welcome back to another episode of Buffalo Happy Hour. Mike, what's going on?
I don't know anymore, man. I really don't. We are in Tonawanda, and we should start with introductions and titles so that everyone knows what they're about to get into and experience, and then we'll talk about all things Frank's.
Sounds good.
You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Frank DiMaria. I am the general manager of Frank's Basement Systems in Buffalo, New York. We also own Frank's Mr. Plumber as well. Been in Tonawanda, New York for going on 40 years now. We have just shy of 150 employees. And that's us.
So does it just so happen that your name's Frank and you own Frank's Basement Services?
There's been a long legacy of Franks in my family. We had, so my grandfather was Francis. My dad is Frank. I'm Frank. My dog's name was Frankie.
Nice.
Unintentionally, we got him from a rescue. That was his name, and I couldn't change it. And then my son's name is Francis as well. So, yeah. No, I think it was pretty premeditated, for sure. I didn't really have much of a choice. Yeah.
So did you always want to take over the business?
No, I didn't. I fought it for a very long time. But growing up in a family construction company where it was like, hey, you want to go hang out with Dad? We're going to go snow plow. Like SJ at 3 a.m. because that's what we did, right? And so I fought it for a while. I pursued some other goals, some other passions. I actually was a teacher in another life. I was an English teacher. And through a series of many different events that happened, I found myself back here. So we can maybe get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to actually, we said Frank's Basement Systems, but what do you guys actually do?
Yeah, so we are the largest residential construction company in Buffalo, New York. We specialize in waterproofing basements, putting pipe in the ground to help alleviate water that's coming in. We are structural specialists, so we do anything from structural carpentry, girders, stanchion posts, all the way to wall replacements, helical piles, where we're helping houses that are sinking into the earth. We take care of crawl spaces, moisture control, mold control, and then on the plumbing side, we're really a full-service plumbing company with a focus on site work. So, sewer excavation, sewer repairs, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think we have 15 crews now that go out every single day on the Frank's Basement side, and another 6 or 7 on the plumbing side, in addition to, I think we're up to 10 or 12 service plumbers at this point now that are going out every single day, doing everything from, fixing the kitchen sink to diagnosing why there's sewage in your basement. Yeah.
And the business has been in operation for how many years?
We're going on 40 years. So my father started it when he was 15 years old. He claims earlier, but it was about 15. And we started landscaping. So we were Frank's Landscaping. So there's still like residents of Tonawanda who are like, Frank's Landscaping. Like, my dad planted flowers, and sometimes he still like walks around here and he's like, all I want to do is plant flowers, right? Like, because we look at his operation now. He's like, all I wanted to do is plant flowers. And he started, on Mrs. Jones's house planting flowers and cutting lawns. And it's a really cool origin story about like how this whole thing started. My father started it, out of his parents' house right on Glen Cove in the town of Tonawanda, and out of a garage. And he used to take a lawnmower and cut lawns. And there's a couple variations of the origin story, but the origin story is my father realized that he had some friends in the neighborhood who were too lazy to wake up to deliver the newspapers. So what he did on Sunday mornings is he went to his friends' parents and said, I'll take your kid's paper out, because respect was still a thing in the community at that time. And they were, the parents wanted their kids to deliver the papers. And he said, I'll go and I'll deliver your papers for your kid. You pay me a vig and I'm going to go deliver these papers. So he got this little route and he was delivering papers. And then those customers, they're like, oh, hey, you're the paper boy. And he said, well, why don't I cut your lawns? And so he got a whole customer base of the people from that, and they were cutting the lawns, and he got a landscaping business going. And what he realized is that in Buffalo, New York, you can't cut lawns because everyone has wet yards. So his first client was like, hey, you can't cut my lawn. No one can cut my lawn. What do we do? And he's like, drainage, of course, and no idea how to do it, right? So I think he went and worked at a competition for a week to go learn how to do it. And then he went back and he waterproofed the backyard of this lady's house, one of his first customers. I won't say her name she's actually still around. And then to make a long story a little shorter, they said, well, you can waterproof my backyard. Can you waterproof my basement? And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. never knew how to do it. So he went and learned, and then went back and waterproofed his first basement. And then with, over the years, what ended up happening is, I'm probably not doing this story justice, but
it's okay.
What ended up happening is that they, when you're in a basement, in order to touch, pipe, you have to be a plumber. So, rather than relying on other people to get plumbing permits to touch pipe, he's like, let's start a plumbing company. So we had a plumbing company, right? And then, with basements came all the structural stuff. So you're like, waterproof a basement. Oh, walls caving in. So let's fix that too. Do you know how? Yep. And then we were, doing I-beams and helical piles. And as we kind of grew up, and my father grew up, and we started getting closely aligned with some professional networks such as Foundation Support Works out of Nebraska and Contractor Nation and Basement Systems out of Connecticut, and to finally kind of like hone in on our craft and, really, really evolve to what we are today. But, just crazy, insane stories that I'll inevitably write a book about my father just growing up with it, because I've had such a unique perspective. Anything from like, him giving warranty on bushes and going back in the night and spray painting them green and being like, they're good, or to, this was, 35 years ago or whatever. But, he's the epitome of the American dream of like, no matter what, I'm going to figure out how to do this, and true entrepreneurship. Right?
So it was all based off of basically opportunity. He saw an opportunity that needed to be addressed. No one else was really doing it.
Yeah. I think that where we have gotten to is definitely a necessity. So like, I believe firmly in the importance of competition in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. I think it's vitally important to free market capitalism that there's, opportunities for consumers to be able to shop, right? I think now we've definitely, capitalized on the opportunity to say, okay, there's not a lot of people doing what we're doing and doing it to the extent that we're doing it with the licenses and everything like that. But I think my father's story, which is really unique to me, came out of a place of, feeling a bit of a misfit. I think he'd be the first one to say that. My father's formal education or whatever like that is nil, right? Like, he self-admittingly says like, hey, I got through school by cutting the teachers' lawns, right? Like, so I think that the education system failed him, but his spirit of saying like, I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to provide, I'm going to have my family and make sure that they have what they need was that necessity. Sure. And now it's evolved into, hey, we're the best at what we do. We need to continue to be the best. And what systems are we going to use to do that? So there was always that big stake of, hey, getting back to your earlier question, did I always want to do this? It was like, Frank, you go get the college education, you go and not play in the mud, right? You go and don't do that. And here I am. But
but you got the education.
But I got the education, right? And English education, right? Like, I kind of always make the joke. I'm like, if you ever feel a little dumb, just remember someone in the world spent like $100,000 on an education in a language we all already speak. But anyways, no, but that's a different story. But I went out and I'm really proud of the education that I got. And, I've applied so much of teaching to running a company. Mm-hmm. Like, that's all it is. So, like, everyone with, like, MBAs and, like, all these courses and whatever, it's like, it's all teaching. That's all it is.
Sure.
It's the true measure of your company is how good you can teach your employees and your team to thrive, right? And that's all this is.
Why did you choose English as a major?
I chose English as a major because I loved storytelling, I loved writing, and I loved what language could do. It's so important. I think it's a lost art, the ability to articulate and to speak. It was so fascinating to me. I actually had thought for a while that I was going to go and be a music teacher because I play drums, I play guitar. Music was a huge part of my life. But I had a crossroads. I had unbelievable English teachers, like people who should have never been teaching at a high school level, like ever. I had one of my teachers had a doctorate from Notre Dame, and I got to study with him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. So
In high school?
In high school, yeah. I had some really overqualified teachers that were exposing me to some really great literature. And then before that, actually, as a quick sidebar, I think what really engaged me with wanting to be an English teacher is my 5th grade teacher. I'm going to throw a shout out to her, is that my 5th grade teacher, they had me in remedial reading classes, like for all of elementary school. So like, the cool kids would go and play like, I don't know, dodgeball or whatever the heck kids do, or whatever's not allowed now, right? And I'd stay and be in like the remedial reading classes. And she realized that like, okay, hey, what are you doing? And she realized that I just couldn't see. So she helped me like on that journey of getting glasses, and then she'd always bring me in a copy of the New York Times, like super pretentious, right? 5th grade, but like she brought in a copy of the New York Times and like helped me through like to get me caught back up, and I was just so fascinated.
You guys bought
like,
some stock, yeah.
We bought some stock together. Yeah, we were trading crypto back in '98 or whatever, right? And then she got arrested for insider trading. She's great. And I saw her recently and I thanked her and I said, you were the reason that, I became a teacher. And I had some great teachers. And she's like, are you still teaching? I'm like, no, I sell drainage. And she was like, oh,
makes sense.
But it makes sense. Yeah. It all tracks. It was at I think the Great Pumpkin Patch with my family. So I didn't have time to do the whole like, hey, let me tell you how this happened. Yeah, so I had great influences. And I love words. They're fun.
Sure.
Yeah.
Have you started the book, the family book?
Which one? Like which family book? Like the biography of my father? Or
I didn't know there were multiples.
No.
Short answer, no.
Next question. Next question. Yes and no. Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
You plan on doing it though?
Eventually.
Yeah,
eventually.
He needs a little more Hemingway influence in his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. A little bit. A little bit more. Yeah.
So you're talking about people's lawns being flooded, and that's kind of what got your dad into doing this whole thing.
Yeah.
What's going on in Buffalo that everybody's lawn's flooded?
We have terrible soil. Like it's horrible. We have what's called expansive soil, right? And we also have like ridiculous weather because it's like gonna probably snow next week, right? Like it's crazy. So what happens is everything's clay, right? And so when clay either is exposed to water or a drought, like it expands and contracts, right? And then put that on top of us being a Rust Belt city, right? They put up houses super fast. They were like, oh, we have a bunch of veterans coming back. We have all this steel. We need to get houses up fast, right? So some not so great builds on top of some really bad soils, on top of crazy weather conditions. That's kind of how we got here, right? So a lot of really quick building and plan development kind of leads to like that backyard drainage not having good grading and stuff like that. But the bigger structural problems, it's all the soils. And then you have like, I can get into it really deep, but like glacial deposits that are thousands and thousands and thousands of feet down, and the movement of like literal subtectonic plates moving and shifting and reverberating all the way up to, the surface that you see. Everything's changing underneath us, and combine that with droughts, heavy rain, houses are sinking, walls are caving in, and then, oh, by the way, they didn't use rebar because why, right? So,
right, yeah, really.
Yeah. Built on swamps some places, and but it's not a Buffalo issue only, right? Like, I mean, we've changed our building practices as a company, and so have people across the U.S., hopefully, to account for 130 years of building.
Sure.
Are you concerned when you see new subdivisions sprouting up in areas where they're where we grew up?
100%.
And you're like, I played in the swamps there, and now it's graded.
Yeah. So I just had this conversation with my father-in-law. He was over at my house, and I live in Williamsville, and he rowed. He was a rower. I don't know much about sports, but I'm gonna trust. I don't even know if rowing is a sport, but
it is.
Sorry for anyone who rows.
Everybody from UB just turned this off.
Yeah. Okay.
or the DUville rowing team is just they're pissed.
What a loss. And so he rowed, and he rowed for, I think, Marist. But anyways, so he'd always come up to UB to row and to train and stuff like that. And he's like, when I came up here less than 30, 40 years ago or whatever, there was nothing. These are swamps. These are just straight up, we never thought people would build here. And he even said that about the UB campus. So when it started going up, they're like, how are they building here? We couldn't even walk over here, but they're building huge buildings. So yeah.
How do they do that?
New builds today are supposed to go through environmental impact surveys, right? Where they're supposed to be doing the soil samples and, the swell test and measuring what the heck is going on with the soil. And I don't do new build, right? We don't do it, right? But I'm thinking that that's happening, right? But I still am worried about, I always joke with my wife. I'm like, I couldn't build a house. Mm-hmm. I'd be like a builder's worst nightmare. I would want helical piles 100 foot into the ground for no reason. Even if I was building on bedrock, I'd be like,
just super unrealistic expectations.
Super unrealistic.
Can we get to the core somehow?
I want 27 inches of concrete wall thick I want it on bedrock with dynamite that blows up the bedrock to drill the piers and then it'd be terrible.
Yeah.
So for now, we're at the house that we're at because I'm not gonna build. Even my wife is like, yeah, we're not building. It would just be nuts. Yeah.
So in the housing market right now, first of all, it's crazy because if you ask for an inspection, you're not going to get the house.
Yeah.
So for people that are watching that are going to look at houses, what should they be looking for in the basement that's a key indicator of get out of the house right now? Because one, you're not going to get an inspection, and two, this thing's going to collapse tomorrow.
Yeah. So here's the gray area of things that I work with a lot of realtors, and the one thing to know is, I don't want to speak out of turn to something that I'm not equipped to speak for, but the advice that I give is that on the property condition disclosure form, you have to disclose structural issues that you know of. And it's not happening. I don't want to make accusations, and I'm not going to substantiate it with any firsthand accounts that I've actually seen. You're held liable for structural issues that you know about that you don't disclose. So number one, look at that form if you're going to waive an inspection, right? The next thing to look at is huge cracks in the walls, right? Huge cracks in the walls, windows and doors that are sticking, a drywall cracking where it really shouldn't be, which is usually over door frames and things like that. General dampness. I see it all the time where there's huge cracks coming out of corners that people patch with hydraulic cement. And they're like, oh, it's been like that forever, which is also my we can talk about that too, which is my favorite thing that people say, that they're like, it's been like that for 30 years. I'm like, yeah, if you go to a casino buffet every day and smoke for 30 years, eventually your body's going to say, I've given you everything I have. Everything has a shelf life, right? You buy a brand new Ford for $80,000. They only give you 3 years, and they're like, good luck after that. So it's I know I've went right around that question. But yeah, look for it's pretty obvious. Like structural issues are, you know it when you see it, right? And
is there like a difference from a advisory standpoint of poured versus block foundation? No.
It depends, right? It depends more about the geographic location than it does the construction.
So what are some geographical locations or towns to be hesitant on going to? I don't want to say stay away from, because there's always workarounds.
So I would have notoriously been like East Amherst, like Ransom Oaks area, right? Around the swamps on UB, right? Like those areas. But I did an interview with the news where they went out to one of our sites to look at a house that we were peering. And one of the things I said in the interview, which continues to reign true, which is, I don't really know why, is we're seeing houses sinking in areas that I've never seen them before, including my father for like 40 years. Like we have notoriously like had our bread and butter of, hey, we know that there could be a house sinking like East Amherst. We just did a job in Lackawanna. And I'm like, what? What do you mean in Lackawanna? In town of Tonawanda, in Cheektowaga, in Grand Island. So I would love to give you a more articulated answer, but it's the landscape of the business is changing as we're sitting here. So it's and that's not like a scare tactic, but like I don't know what's going on 100%.
When it comes to the new build and construction and building codes, how is there so many changes occurring at a rate that it's tough to kind of keep up with? Like, how does that look from the business standpoint with ever-changing codes and then ever-changing laws and regulations? Because if it's changing everywhere, then there's got to be a message from who's ever doing these tests or the builders in saying like, hey, this is what we're looking at.
So what's tough about that is with anything, New York State gives a law, right? And they give a directive. And then every municipality that has their own governing body, let's call it, right? Their own set of code enforcement and everything. They can't change that law to not enforce it, but they can beef it up. And that's where it gets convoluted, right? So if there's a law that's put out, they can't change that law, especially if it's like health, safety, anything that we're talking about, but they can add whatever they want onto it to beef it up, right? And a lot of municipalities do it for the benefit of the taxpayer, right? Because like they'll interpret New York State law and they'll say, you know what? It needs a couple more things. This is a good idea, but we need a couple more things to ensure health and safety and longevity and whatever. But the problem is especially here, it changes so rapidly. And then a lot of it's on interpretation, right? So what we do in Grand Island, for instance, for code is radically different than what the code is in Kenmore, for instance, which makes it really problematic for a company like us who's trying to do the right thing, because we have certified master plumbers on staff who are like, my license is on the line. My dad's a master plumber, right? So it's like, how do you keep up with it? So I think we try to build really, really good relationships with all the inspectors, the municipalities. We always pull permits. We always get engineers. We always do like the things that you're supposed to do. But I don't know. It's tough. I can't imagine being in new build right now, especially like just trying to keep up alone with the price of materials and like on a daily basis. I have a friend who does new build, and he's like, I have no idea what like I can only do on a new build house a quote that is good for a week. Like if they're not signing for like right now, like I don't know what it's going to be. If this is Monday, I don't know what the price of X, Y, and Z is going to be by next week. Like the price of pipe alone, if you can get like Schedule 30 or 3035 or any of like the sewer and Schedule 40, like I don't know what the price is going to be if you can find it. So I can't even imagine what like a new build development's doing on, granite or I don't know, whatever windows,
The supply chain has just got to be a nightmare in this world.
Yeah, it is.
Because who makes the materials? Is it outside entities and countries that were just waiting on imports, or is it made within the U.S.?
No, it's imports.
It's imports.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to sit here and say like everything's American made, but like it doesn't financially make sense for people who are trying to put out that amount of product. And it's a shame. I wish that there were more, systems in place to be able to substantiate building product here, right? I mean, it's what we're seeing with Ford trucks right now. You have like hundreds and thousands of Ford trucks just sitting there, and they've sent employees home because they literally are waiting for a chip, like not from America. And then like, not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but at the end of the day, like a company like Ford saying, hey, we're going to invest billions and billions of dollars to make our own chips here so we can have a sustainable product in the US. And then everyone's saying, well, then we're not going to sell you raw materials.
Right.
And ultimately, I think it's one of the talking points that should be talked about more is it's hurting the people that are trying to help jumpstart this potential near recession, to not crash the market, but to try to help and contribute to it. And you don't have the means necessary to do it. You can't get raw materials. You can't get the stuff you need. And it's hurting ultimately. I think what makes me so aggravated about all of this is like it's hurting like Mrs. Jones on ABC Street, like who's been at her house for 50 years, who's a widow, right? And, has been saving up her like whatever to pay for her collapsing basement wall because she has to live at her house because she like the price of putting her in a home is not feasible. She can't move anywhere, right? Because she wants a home inspection. She can't buy a house with a home inspection. And where's she gonna go? And I have to look at her and be like, look, like I can't viably do your job for what I told you it was gonna be 4 months ago because I'll lose money. And then like our amazing warranty won't be in place because I'll be out of business if I don't do things responsibly.
Yeah.
So it's been some rough conversations.
When it comes to the town, like all the codes and everything that you're talking about, the owner of the house doesn't have to worry about that, right? Your company handles all of that communication between everybody?
Yes. So we pull all the permits like on our name. The one thing that we do that's different, and I'm going to encourage anyone listening to this podcast to do it. If you work with my company or don't work with my company, go out and seek the services when it comes to a structural problem of your own engineer. Like I'm saying that at the cost of people not working with me and going into a competition, because what I see in this industry, companies go out and say, we're an engineer. And I say, no, you're not. Because an engineer is licensed on behalf of New York and has a fiduciary obligation to the homeowner to make a drawing that is going to be a drawing that substantiates structural stability of your home. Then you bring it to us or someone who does structural work and says, this is how much it costs to execute this plan. Like it's so problematic when you have people that are talking about how to fix something that haven't gone to school you have to go to school for like 8 years to become a structural engineer. And then you have to go and be an apprentice for like another 75 years. And then you get a stamp, right? And then you can actually like, not just design lampposts, you can design like, how do I stop this wall from caving in? So I take care of like the plumbing and the building permits and I file it. I have to file those, the stamp drawings with the municipalities and they keep them on file. But if you got a structural problem, start with a qualified structural engineer. Like I just told you, I went to school for English education. Like I got a good idea of like how to fix a basement, but like I didn't go to school for engineering, right? So
when it comes to the Frank's name, on a micro level, with us, what we like to do is obviously support local for one.
Yeah.
But for two, when it comes to materials that we use or products that we put out, we try to facilitate other small businesses to come up with a product.
Yep.
The products that you guys use, is it local or is it within the country? Like, are you trying to combat the supply chain issue by using things that are made from within the country?
So here's the thing. So most of the products that I use on the basement side of things are proprietary products that were invented by a gentleman named Larry Janeski, who is an absolutely brilliant entrepreneur who started Connecticut Basement Systems and Contractor Nation. Okay. I know that some of the components are made and assembled in the U.S., but I'm just going to speak for all contractors at this point, and especially our own business. It is at the point right now that like I hate to say it this way, but I don't care where it comes from because I need to get it. Mm-hmm. And it sounds terrible to say that, but that's the reality, is that like, as long as it's being done morally and ethically right, like I'd love to say, like I said earlier, everything is, American made, but like it's not happening. Like I can't, so.
I mean, it's not like it's a new iPhone. It's literally your house is falling.
Right.
You don't really have luxury to sit around.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, and I'll throw, shout outs to a lot of our, local vendors we work with. Like, I can't say that the products are necessarily made in America, but like we try to work with local vendors, so we're making relationships with like the local plumbing supply houses, and with the local, steel dealer and a stone dealer. And, we're trying to forge relationships so that like other businesses within our world are getting our business and staying alive. And I think that like, that's a good contribution, of saying like, hey, we're going to do business with you, and we're also going to respect the fact that you need to responsibly do price increases to keep your business open, and we're not going to give you a hard time about it, right? So that's our contributing factor.
And it's the same thing too, because you mentioned Support Works out of Nebraska.
Yep.
And that's another provider from within the country.
Yep.
So that's a good note.
Yeah.
So from obviously you're working with homeowners and taxpayers within Erie County.
Yep.
What other community work has Frank's done as well?
Is it just Erie County?
Yeah, no. So Frank's Mr. Plumber is in Erie County and into Niagara a little bit as well. And then the basement side goes everywhere from Buffalo proper all the way out to like Webster, Henrietta.
Oh, wow.
All the way up to the lake and then down to the Erie PA border. So yeah, that's our geographic location. So yeah.
Wow.
We have quite a territory. Yeah. So
I interrupted you, but I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't just Erie County. What were you saying?
I don't remember your question at all.
Yeah. Perfect.
And
I'm smoked right now mentally because it's been a day.
It's been a day. It's been a year.
It has been a year. Cheers.
It's been 2 years. It's been a long 2 years.
Yeah. Since you left teaching, I'm just kidding.
That's right.
I'm just kidding.
That was years ago.
Yeah. I honestly forgot what it was, and it was a good question. Oh, community work.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a really good.
Yeah, it was a really good question.
I think that you were asking as a business, how do you give back to the community? I think it was that segment.
Essentially, you're one of the largest businesses we've ever had on our show from an employee count standpoint.
Sure.
Most businesses have 20 or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's our mission statement. Small businesses, how about the boys? And
not having tops
are we ending this interview right now?
Yeah, we're too corporate. We're too corporate. Yeah, we're sellouts.
This shirt pressed. Yeah,
you're fine.
I'm gonna go teach poetry.
But when you're that large, then your footprint is obviously large, and obviously the demographics, the territory that you guys work in is very large. Mm-hmm. So what other things are you doing in regards to the community?
So I will say this. So my father has had this, stance of, he said a couple things to me forever that are forever ingrained in me, right? And it's always, remember who's helping you on the way up, because those are going to be the same people you're passing on the way down, right? I will speak for him. I will speak for myself, and I'm certainly not a religious person by any means or anything like that, but I am truly humbled every day and feel unbelievably blessed by what we have. So let me just say that, right? My family, myself, my father specifically has ingrained in me, always know where you came from, right? Because even though we have this beautiful facility and everything like that, we have nothing without people in our team, in our community. We have nothing. It's just a big 70,000 square foot building that's blue, at that point, right? And there's a cool game room, but that's so some of the community things, my father is constantly and I we're trying to always look for opportunities to help people that need it, right? So like on a smaller scale, I think one of the most proud things that we've done is that we're aligned with Heart for the Homeless, and best people over there doing work that people can't even imagine. We just did, I think it was last year, we did the Heart for the Homeless project. They were opening up a grocery store, basically like a food pantry, where people who, are hard on their luck are able to come in, and they created a grocery store that people could come in and they got vouchers, and they could actually go and like bring their kids in and but shop, right? And they built aisles and freezers to kind of bring some normalcy to like a otherwise really crappy situation. And we were able to waterproof that entire basement and make sure that it was within standards to keep food down there. And we put dehumidifiers down there, waterproofed it, did the vapor barriers on the walls. And it was just such a good team building experience to have. I think we had almost 25 or 30 people there. Wow. We brought some food trucks, and like everyone just got down and dirty and just bashed out like almost 200 foot of drain tile. And it was the coolest thing ever. And like that will forever be one of my most amazing moments at work, like far past anything a P&L statement could say. Like knowing that like that happened, I'll take that to the grave, right? I know, over the years, my father's done a bunch of different projects. Actually, over at Suburban Hospital on Maple, my father, in a very proud way, did the Hope Garden, where he built a big like paver garden and kind of like basically outdoor sanctuary for people who lost their children. That was a place of like refuge for them, and it's still standing.
Oh wow,
that's on the right side of the building, isn't it?
Yeah. It's out. Yeah, it's out there, and he actually did that, and I thought stuff like that, projects like that, and then I hear all the time, and I try to emulate this too, like, oh my gosh, your father did this, and it's stuff that I didn't even know, right? Like, so when you grow up in a family where you're a family-owned business, it's been a really cool experience for me to be like, okay, well, I know Dad was, working, and like we always like had what we needed, right? I didn't always know what that looked like. So now being in this company for so long, and now I'm hearing the stories, it's a super cool experience to be like, your father showed up at 3 a.m. and like saved my life. And like, cause I called him and I knew he could help. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that legacy is unbelievable. And like, how do I do that now, as on a very small scale?
Maybe at 6 o'clock.
Maybe at 6 o'clock. Yeah, maybe at 6 o'clock. Yeah.
We'll go 6:15.
6:15.
Yeah, you got to grab a coffee.
Yeah, but I think the other thing is, I don't want to sound cliche, but like one of like the mottos that I always say, and I think it resonates super. Like, just do the right thing, right? Like, and I'm getting increasingly concerned that sentiment is lost on so many people. Like, just do the right thing, and if you have to ask like what the right thing is, then that's you're psychopath, right? Like, it's problematic. Like, just try to do the right thing. Try to have humanity. Try to know that, there's other people out there who are hurting, and when we're dealing with customers, like, it's scary. I take it for granted all day long. I go into a house and I'm like, yeah, all 4 walls need to be replaced. No big deal. We'll be here like in a couple months. And the people are like, what? Like, you're going to lift my house out of the ground and remove all 4 walls? I'm like, yeah, no big deal.
And I can wait 4 months?
Yeah, I can wait 4 months? Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, no big deal. I'm like, but this is like tragic. And you gotta think, like, and I try to instill it in my employees, like, this is the biggest news, like, that this person will probably receive this decade. Like, that their whole house needs to be like fixed.
Right.
100 foot of wall, it's gone. They're going to pull up to the house and their house is going to be on stilts. There's going to be no walls. And they got to hope that we're going to come back, which we are. But which we are, right? And
looks good.
Right. That'll buff out, right? Like, and it's big work. And like, people are legitimately nervous about it. So I think, like, to your thing about like, well, what are we doing with the community? Like, I wish more number one. But number two, I think like on a daily basis, I'm going to take it back here. I initially got into teaching because I wanted to help people, right? Like I really wanted to help people. And I believed in a mission of people are good and I can help them. And I can do it through a means of literature. So, right? And now it's people are good. People need help. People don't know what they don't know. And I can help them by like fixing their homes. We're literally rebuilding foundations of houses. Like, it's a cool metaphor, but like we're literally doing that, right? We're keeping, spaces dry. We're, we're working on, jobs where people have outgrown their houses and we're putting egress windows in, right? Like, and so people have more room in their house so that, they can stay at their house and not have to compete in this crazy real estate market.
Right.
It's cool stuff.
You mentioned a warranty a while ago.
Yeah.
How long is your warranty?
Yes. So it's a lifetime transferable warranty. As defined by New York State.
How do you even guarantee something like that?
Yeah, so it's 25. It's a 25-year transferable warranty. New York State says a warranty has to have a time frame on it for it to be valid. So we said, okay, most people are getting into their houses. Hey, 5 years into their mortgage, they usually are seeing problems. And finish out the mortgage, completely transferable, right? Any problems that you see with our work, and I always, look, there's going to be problems. There's human elements, there's design elements, whatever. It's a completely transferable warranty. If you see any problems, they're always going to show up in the first 6 months, right? I have a full service department here that goes out and rectifies it immediately. And, anyone can look really, really good when things are good. But I think the true measure of like a person, a company, anything is what happens in times of chaos. And I will tell you this. My dad says it a bit facetiously, but he's like, I'm the best there is. I am the best that there is. You want to know why? Because I've made every single friggin' mistake that can be made. And I've learned from them because I've screwed up everything over 40 years, right? So you get the benefit of saying, okay, we know how to fix this. And what's really cool is, okay, you get the work done with us. You sell the house tomorrow. I own that basement. Right? Like I own that basement for 25 years. So unless my kid can get more coordinated, which I don't see happening, he's not going to probably become like a neurosurgeon. Maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe he'll listen to this podcast in 25 years and say, Dad, look at my degree. And then end up still working here. But it transfers over. And like, being in business for 40 years, we're going to be around. Like, I'm taking over the reins. I'm running things. We're going to be around for the longevity. Sell your house. I own that basement. And the reputation that we have knows that, like, you talk about not having an inspection on a house, right? Well, what's really cool, and I'm going to say it a bit cocky, is like a lot of agents will be like, okay, there's a Frank's warranty. Don't worry about it. The basement's good. That's cool, right?
It's a huge selling point
right now. It's a huge selling point. And that's the biggest thing that you want to look at a house is like the mechanics, the basement, and the roof. And Frank's was here, don't worry about it. Frank's was here, don't worry about it. Like, and it's cool to have that name.
If someone's brand new as a homeowner,
yeah,
and they're getting work done in their basement,
yeah,
the cliff notes, because I'm sure it's super involved, but what does it actually look like when a crew, like, what is the Frank's experience? What does it actually look like, and what is really involved if you're a homeowner getting a full system installed?
It's like a waterproofing system? Okay. So customer will call us because they have water coming into their basement, let's say, right? So we have a design specialist. We have 13 design specialists now who go out and they diagnose the problem and they give a list of options to say, look, these are the ways that we know that we can fix your basement, right? And we help the customer to decide what's best for them and their goals. That's number one, right? And some people say, like, I just want a dry basement. I want to have plans of finishing this, whatever the case is. We have our 15 crews. It's assigned to a crew. Crew comes out, meets the homeowner, goes over the contract, and then the fun begins, right? Like I tell people when I talk to them about what we're going to do, I say, you're going to hate me for about 2 days because I'm going to have 3 really strong guys come down with jackhammers and beat the heck out of your basement for a long time, and your neighbors are going to be mad. And we're going to literally have guys running up and down the stairs with 5-gallon pickle buckets full of concrete and clay. And I'm going to dig a huge trench around the entire perimeter of your basement, which is going to go into a big sump liner hole in the ground where the water's going to go to. They're going to clean everything up, and then they're going to be running back up and down the stairs with buckets full of concrete and re-concrete your entire basement. And it's going to be dusty. And then we're going to be out of there, and you're going to be like, oh my God, my basement's dry. And you're going to forget all the pain. But it's bull work. I mean, it's really hard work. Like, I love and hate my father for this, but like, it's like, hey, my friends were whatever, baseball camp or whatever. That's probably why I'm not good at sports games or whatever. But I did play hockey, but that's not even whatever. They made me the goalie because I was the big kid. It's hard work. I mean, it's super, super, super hard work. And
how many buckets have you moved?
Oh, that was my point. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Thank you very much.
Gotcha.
Since I was like 14 or 15, I've been here. Like at night and on weekends, this is what I did. Like I did this. I hauled buckets up and down stairs. In fact, I remember distinctly one of the first times I was on a job. I didn't know, but a sewer had broken into the drainage ditch that I was digging. So I was hauling dirt into buckets, and then they had busted out a window to bring the 5-gallon pickle buckets out. My dad had rolled up to the job site to probably ensure that like they were like kicking my butt like reasonably enough that like, right? And I never forget holding the bucket up and bringing it up and just absolute feces everywhere. Just all over.
Oh no!
And I think it was. I think I threw the bucket on the driveway and I said, "I'm done." I left. I got my dad's truck and I'm like, "This is it. I'm done." And then it got real like loud in Italian. He's like, "Get back in that basement, like do it." And I did. And I don't know how many buckets I moved. I don't know. So I was real tough guy, like teenager. So I was always in 3 buckets, 4 buckets. I mean, they're so heavy.
Yeah.
I think that's why I have back problems. Like currently, like I'm in so much pain all the time. So, I don't know, 10 million buckets.
10 million buckets.
10 billion, billions of buckets. So I've moved more buckets.
All the buckets.
I'm the best bucket mover.
So, what is the relationship now with your dad?
It's good. He stays on his side of the building and I stay on mine.
So he still works?
Yeah, every single day. He's currently, if you could turn the cameras around, he's currently repaving a huge part of the parking lot. And he loves it. I mean, he loves it. He loves being in the field. And we've developed a really good relationship. We've had to set some like clear boundaries and be like, this is what I do, mm-hmm. and this is what you do. And out of those conversations, it first started off, we were sharing this office, and I was essentially, when we first bought this building, I was sharing this office with him, and it was like my life was literally Tommy Boy. I'm like sharing an office with my father. I'm like, what is going on? And we out of those like, this is what you're doing, this is what I'm doing, conversations came. This is what you're really good at, and this is what I'm really good at. And if we can combine forces, and figure this out, mm-hmm. It can work. And so I stay in here, and I work on the business and the business side of it and the stuff that he can't stand looking at. And he goes out there and he makes things happen. He gets people motivated, and he helps to run jobs, and he helps to interact with customers, and he's the greatest cheerleader in the entire world for this organization. And still after being in business for 40 years, gets down in the trenches and digs. Mm-hmm. I mean, he loves it, and he's the hardest working person I've ever met. Unbelievable. Yeah, it's amazing.
How old is he?
He's gonna be 55 this year, so he's not that old, but he's lived a lot of lifetimes. He's lived a lot of lifetimes.
So how do people get in touch with Frank's if they have something, and mm-hmm. what is a typical first sign that you probably should call Frank's?
Good question. So if people are calling us, well, the simplest one is if you have human waste in your basement, you should probably call us.
It's probably
right. It's probably a good idea. If your sewer's backing up and there's feces everywhere, that's a good sign. So you could call our plumbing department, and we have our phone numbers, and we're all over the internet and all that. Get a hold of us, call us, and there you go. Right. We dispatch a service plumber out, and we figure out what's going on and why there's poop in your basement. On the foundation side and waterproofing side of it, if you're seeing things that you don't like, I find that homeowners really, really, a lot of them don't go in their basement very often. They really don't. And they're really kind of oblivious to what's happening. And so I feel like a lot of people will say, oh my God, I went and did laundry, my wall's collapsing in. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, unless you just had your road paved, or your next door neighbor brought in put in a pool and a circus happened next door. It didn't just happen, right? It's happened over 25 years or 30 years or 50 years or 100 years. It's gotten progressively worse, and now you're noticing it because it's bad. So big cracks in the walls, and then, hey, this can happen where people walk into a basement, their basement floods for the first time. Their sump pump failed. They didn't have a backup sub pump. Their discharge lines were completely broken. The interior drainage failed because it's clay pipe from 1952, and it was only supposed to last 30 years, right? So you can get a hold of us, send in web leads, give us a call, and send out a specialist.
Do you have an Instagram or Facebook page?
We do. Yep. We're on Facebook, Instagram. I think our marketing director might be doing that TikTok thing.
Nice.
My old man, right? But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of good stuff. Yeah.
And what's the website?
franksbasements.com and callmrplumber.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else that you want to add before we sign off?
No,
Get back to work?
I really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
This helped me to figure out some things about my own company, so I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I just huge shout out to you guys. The podcast rules. I love being on it, and I love what you guys are doing with local companies and local businesses, and I'm really glad to have you guys here.
Cool.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
So if you have a problem with your basement, hit them up.
Yeah.
They'll secure it for a lifetime. So thank you.
Per New York State.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.